Story 1, we stopped trying at the same time. No fight, no drama, just silence. Story 2, I realized she never put effort into learning about my life. She would want to spend time together but never asked about me. It was always about her. I know she cared, but the lack of interest made me feel like an accessory instead of a friend. Story 3, he borrowed a lot of money from me and never paid it back. Story 4, his wife tried to sleep with me. I turned her down, so she ran to him and told him that I had tried to sleep with her, perhaps to preempt me exposing her. My best friend believed her, and things got really nasty. He eventually learned the truth and tried to patch things up with me, but by then there was too much bad blood. Story 5, this has happened a few times. When I was a kid, the first person decided he would rather join my bullies than be my friend. As an adult, the second person ghosted me. After my divorce, I realized the third person had been hiding my ex-wife's affair from me and only revealed it after a falling out with her. Story 6, she got a boyfriend and stopped talking to me for months. When we both tried to talk again, it did not feel the same. Felt forced. We did not talk much afterward. After a year, I tried reaching out, but it seemed she had blocked me on everything. Story 7, he loaned me $90 when I was intoxicated, thinking I would be too impaired to remember, and then tried to claim it had been $300. When I confronted him about this, he became defensive and stopped talking to me. Story 8, she left me the day we were scheduled to take an international trip we had planned for 2 years. I went alone and had an amazing time, aside from the loneliness. It has been 2 years since we spoke. She had been my best friend for 20 years. I have not been able to trust anyone the same way since then. I have tried to make new friends, but a longtime friend is different, and I am not sure I will ever have that again. Story 9, she was growing into a person I didn't like, but I stayed friends with her because we had 17 years of history together. When I met my husband, I 100% knew he was the one and told her I was head over heels in love. But when she met him, she told me, he seems more my type than yours. He's too attractive for you. Okay, bitch, whatever. Then one day she and I were out in an area with poor cell service and I used her phone to call my husband and let him know when I would be home. She secretly saved his number. He began telling me that Nicole wasn't a good friend and that he did not want to be around her. One day he sat me down and told me the reason. She was trying to hook up with him. He showed me the texts where she was begging him to cheat on me, telling him I would never have to know, asking how he could stay faithful to someone so ugly, meaning me when she was so much better looking, and she sent pictures of her breasts. I ended the friendship with her immediately. Our circle of friends was divided on the issue. I refused to socialize with her, so if they invited me to anything I asked if Nicole was going and politely declined if she was. They told me, yeah, she fucked up, but you're choosing some guy over a 17-year friendship and it's putting people in an uncomfortable spot, having to choose who to invite to things. I replied, well, I don't want to make anyone uncomfortable, so I'll make it easy on you. You all can have her. Don't bother inviting me to anything again. I never spoke to any of them again. That was 22 years ago, and I stand by my decision. When my husband died, a couple of them reached out. I did not reply. Story 10. He became so involved in drugs that he assaulted his girlfriend with a baseball bat, shattering one of her eye sockets. He served time in prison for that. It was hard to recover from. Story 11. He asked to watch my apartment and my cats. I told him to use the guest bedroom. I came home to traumatized cats hiding in the studio apartment and my bed sheets soaked in baby oil. I kicked him out and never spoke to him again. Story 12. The final straw was her birthday. She invited me to go into the city to spend over $100, back when that was a lot of money, to make a cake at a popular bakery. She had ghosted me for years before that, and we had reunited only a few months earlier. She made it clear she had asked all her other friends and they had declined, so I was her last resort. Girl, you do not have to rub in how unimportant I am to you and how ready you are to use me. Story 13. She started dating my brother 2 days after I told her he was molesting me. Now she is with my ex-fiancé. Fucking weirdo. Story 14. I felt I was always the one proposing plans and making the effort to arrange meetings. So I told myself I would wait for them to call first. It has been 4 months since we last spoke. Story 15. We, as people, sometimes grow into new versions of ourselves. He and I grew into incompatible versions over time. The time we had was priceless, and it was time to wish him well. Story 16. She offered to store some of my things so I did not have to pay for storage, and then sold them online. Some were irreplaceable, such as custom-made furniture my late father had made with live edges. She and her husband had a large house with plenty of space and earned a good income. I have never received an explanation or an apology. Story 17. She died. She was diagnosed with cancer on her 50th birthday. She had 2 years of chemotherapy, but eventually it was all too much. I stayed with her until the very end. I miss her every day. Sorry, that was such a downer. Someone should ask Reddit how they met their best friend instead. Those stories are usually funny. Story 18. I had a friend since first grade. We became close in high school. In college, he moved away to a fancy school in Switzerland. He was always a bit rude and abrasive, but whatever happened there, he came back 10 times worse. He became extremely status-obsessed and developed a huge contempt for poor people. His parents gave him some money and a place to stay. He would say things I could not imagine he actually believed, like that he did not understand why people had mortgages and that they should just buy houses in cash. He hated poor people and had a strong disdain for anyone in debt. He said cruel things, for example that he planned to start a business and only hire people in debt so he could treat them poorly and they could not afford to quit. I tried hard to turn him around, but it never worked. I graduated college and got a job in my field, and he kept pressing me about how much money I made even though it was not a lot. I kept deflecting until one day I finally caved. He seemed to enjoy that I was earning so little. I was working the graveyard shift and was tired all the time. One evening before work, I met him for coffee. He could tell I looked exhausted and, thinking he was being sly, insulted me indirectly by saying people who get out of bed for anything less than 6 figures are stupid. I had enough. I said I was going to leave and walk to my car. By the time I had the key in the ignition, I told myself the friendship was over and never looked back. He texted to ask to meet for coffee, but I ignored him. I realized that continuing to hang out with him would only bring me down. After I ended the friendship, my life got much better. Story 19. I was 14, and we were inseparable in a very remote part of Missouri until one day he told me to act my color. It hit me like a ton of bricks. I moved up and moved on. He stayed where he was. My parents picked him up and invited him over for Christmas break because I was having a rough time, an 8-hour round trip. We were playing outside, and he became so upset because something happened to his shoes. At that moment, I knew the relationship was over. I felt a weight lifted when we dropped him back off at home. I haven't really talked to him in 25 years. Story 20. Her personality changed after she got a boyfriend. In her long-term relationship, she belonged completely to her ex-boyfriend and distanced herself from all her friends. I was not her friend then. I became closer to her after her breakup. I thought her ex was manipulative, keeping her away from friends while she did his laundry and he played video games. After the breakup, I supported her with my time, energy, and money, as she is very bad with money, and encouraged her to participate in college functions. I even helped her get her current job. But when she moved in with her new boyfriend, she began treating me as a convenience, remembering me only when she needed something and repeating the same patterns she had with her ex. The only thing that matters to her is the man she is dating. She forgets everyone else. Now I can see why her previous friends left her. It was not her ex-boyfriend. It was her all along. I blocked her without giving closure because she was not acting unknowingly. She knew what she was doing. Now she is trying to paint me as the villain. Story 21. I just stopped reaching out. The friendship was more one-sided than I thought. Story 22. When it was just the two of us, things were good. But once we started hanging out in groups, he began taking every opportunity to make fun of me and make me the butt of the joke. He asked to borrow money. I gave it to him and never got it back. It hurt to learn I had to be more careful about lending money, especially to someone I had trusted for so long. Later, he asked me to get involved in robberies. I did not call him back, and I soon found his arrest records. It makes me sad because he was a talented musician and academically brilliant. We had a lot of fun when we were younger. Time moves on and people change. I hope he is doing well and staying out of trouble wherever he is. Story 23. She was having an affair with my husband. Hard to come back from that one, laughing out loud. I cut ties with both of them and am much happier now. Story 24. My dad died. My friends asked me to hang out. I said I would, but I only wanted a quiet evening playing video games or watching a movie. They promised that would be the plan. Within an hour, it had become a packed house party and they forgot about me. I stood up and left, and none of them realized until the next day. Story 25. She stood and watched while 10 teenagers assaulted me at a house party we should not have attended. Story 26. I eventually realized she was never happy for my good news. She constantly made backhanded comments. For example, when I told her I was excited to finally have a co-parenting schedule because it meant I could join a trivia group, she said, "Must be nice to have free time. I never get to go out." At every major event in my life, she acted petty and jealous. Yet she was there for me when something bad happened. In a twisted way, I realized she liked seeing me suffer. It was not that she did not like me. She was deeply unhappy and insecure about her own life. My empathy, however, had limits. Story 27. He walked out on his 8 months pregnant fiancée because she was moody. He knew my father had filed for divorce without warning while my mother was 6 months pregnant, on the first anniversary of her brother's death, and he had blamed her moodiness. He could not understand why it made me angry, which made me realize he was selfish and had no empathy. Story 28. Her husband was consistently rude to me. She implied it was a both sides problem. Even though I never said anything negative about him, I dreaded being around him. I lost respect for her for playing his childish games and eventually stopped communicating. Story 29. I asked her to be my maid of honor. She said she wanted our friendship to remain a beautiful memory. That was the last time I spoke to her. It has been 19 years and I will never understand why. Story 30. She said people who have mental health struggles are using it as an excuse not to do things. My dad has stage 4 cancer. I struggle with the thought of losing him. I found out I have cancer as well, not as severe as my father's but still difficult. I am using my mental health as an excuse. Stupid bitch. Story 31. I have no idea. She just ghosted me. I called and wrote letters, drove 250 miles one way, got a room, and left a letter on her door saying, "I love you. I miss you. I'm in town for 3 days. Come by or call. Let's talk." There was no response. On Monday, I drove home and did not reach out again. I still miss her. Story 32. I moved out of town and tried to keep in touch, but eventually he removed me from all social media and we never spoke again. Story 33. My first best friend from middle school became popular. I wasn't cool enough to keep up. My second best friend got angry because I backed out of getting a place with him in college after he failed to put down a deposit or sign any paperwork for a month. The other roommates voted him off the island, and he blamed me. My third best friend made poor life choices, so I cut him off. There was too much drama. He was always asking for money. My fourth best friendship has been going well for a decade. We both work hard, have similar interests and views, and our wives mostly get along. Story 34. He became addicted to meth. We were in the same circle of friends and he had been engaged, but over a couple of months all his relationships fell apart. I tried to help him because we had been best friends for 20 years, but one day he disappeared. I later learned he went to jail for selling meth. Story 35. She always turned every conversation into the M show. All about herself, her children, and her troubled husband. I tolerated it because she needed an outlet. But when something traumatic and violent happened to me, she spent 2 minutes comforting me, then launched into a story about her son. I ended it then. Story 36. Laughing out loud. There was a second group chat that I was not part of. Story 37. I got tired of her letting me down, and I knew the friendship had run its course. I blocked her and never spoke to her again. Story 38. She got angry that I did not have as much time for her after I went back to work. Or maybe she was more jealous than angry. I do not know. We had both been stay-at-home moms when our friendship blossomed, and we did a lot together. My life changed and I simply did not have the same free time. Anyway, she told my husband that I had slept with a man in Ireland, even though we had traveled there together. That claim was completely fabricated, and that was the end of our friendship. Story 39. I never liked how she treated me and did not think it was okay. I needed years of work on my trauma and self-esteem to realize that I do not have to keep someone in my life if I do not want to, or if in my judgment they are not good for me. Story 40. In late April 2021, my father fell, and the doctors told me it was doubtful he would recover. I had already planned to meet our best friends that Sunday, but instead I drove to be with my dad as he spent his final hours. I stopped at her workplace to tell her I was going to sign hospice papers and stay until my father passed. I mentioned I was glad I had received my vaccinations for coronavirus disease 2019 and would be able to visit him in the hospital and the hospice facility once they moved him. She came unglued and launched into every vaccine conspiracy theory circulating at the time. She said everyone who got the vaccine would die, that I was shedding virus despite having received the messenger ribonucleic acid vaccine, and that I had been injected with a micro-tracking device. Her list was long, but there was no sympathy or support for me as I prepared to sign papers and watch my father die. Instead, she shouted at me to get away. I cut ties with her that day. My husband continued to see her and her husband for a few more months because he could not believe my account. He changed his mind when he found clear evidence they had lied about a grade school instrument rental. They had repeatedly told us they returned the clarinet after their daughter stopped practicing and accused the school of failing to record the return. Later, they told my husband someone was coming to buy the clarinet, contradicting the story they had told us less than 6 months earlier and repeated since. Story 41. She sided with my former partner even though she had known me longer than she had known him, and at one point we were like sisters. I introduced her to my former partner. I even begged him to help her sort out a £12,500 loan that her ex-boyfriend used to buy his new car and then refused to pay back. She recovered a large portion of that money. They messaged each other during that time and confided in one another to the point that they knew each other better than I knew either of them. She fanned his jealousy and insecurities, masking them as jokes. A few months ago, she contacted me asking for my new number. I refused, wanting to keep my peace, and at that time I was trying to cut off anyone or anything that linked me to him, because he used anything to try to get me back. She then unfriended me on all social media and also unfriended our mutual friend, who had been sheltering me, helping me find a job, and saving me from stress and self-pity. Story 42. He kicked my brother out of his truck after my brother called him out on a lie. We were camping about 50 kilometers outside the city. I told him, "If you are kicking him out, you realize you are ending the friendship, right?" He just said, "You can stay, but he has to go." So I walked all the way back to the city with my brother. I have not spoken to that lying sack of crap in 16 years. Story 43. I found out he had slapped his wife outside a video store after an argument. I confronted him. At first he denied it, but after a bit of back and forth he admitted it. I warned him that if he ever laid a finger on her again in anger, I would beat him to a pulp. A few weeks later, I got a phone call from his wife saying he had hit her again. I went looking for him but couldn't find him. He had completely disappeared. After a couple of days, I learned he had flown abroad to live with his stepfather in another country. I told his mother, sister, and everyone else that if he ever set foot back in town, I would beat the living shit out of him. I never saw or heard from him again. She threw out or sold all his things, divorced him, and moved on with her life. Story 44. She went to a Pink concert, which made her realize she was a lesbian and no longer wanted to associate with people who were not lesbians. My being bisexual and actively dating women was not enough to remain in her circle. Last I heard, she married a man a few years ago. Story 45. She ran for state office. After a couple of unsuccessful cycles, she won. After that, every request to catch up involved asking me to donate to her campaign. Once she asked me to break $1,000 into 4 donations of $250 from 4 different family members. I'm still not sure why I did that, but I did. Then I received a nice invitation to her swearing-in ceremony with a handwritten note that said I could not have done it without my friends. When I responded to the invitation and said I would love to go, that I was honored, and that I would bring my 13-year-old son, the next day an assistant called and said she would not be able to have any in-person time with me. The best they could offer was a hotel reservation where I could watch a live camera feed. So much for that. The last invitation was to a fundraiser in her support with a ticket price of $500, and she wanted me to buy a table so some of our school friends could attend without the cost to them. She does not even represent my state. While I am truly happy for her, the friendship had become something that worked for her but not for me. We just had a major reunion that I did not attend. Between school officials trying to collect legacy gifts from older alumni and her soliciting alumni for donations, I felt I had outgrown the whole thing. Nothing against her, really. I was simply not willing to pay to maintain a friendship in that way. Story 46. He told me that he did not want to put any effort into our friendship and that it was okay for us not to talk for several weeks. He acknowledged that this was not kind and said he was not going to change. Story 47. She was supposed to stay at my house and watch my dogs while I was on vacation. She showed up to pick up the check, left the door unlocked, and never came back. Luckily, my next-door neighbor stepped in and helped, but my dog had so much anxiety that he developed stress-induced pancreatitis. I never spoke to her again. Story 48. He told me to snap out of it and that I cannot afford to be weak when I was grieving the death of a family member. Story 49. It was my sister. She went to college and got a boyfriend. Story 50. I spent 10 years trying to encourage her to leave her abusive partner. She would not, and I was burned out from dealing with it. Story 51. I realized she enjoyed my misery and thrived during my bad times. When I started therapy and regained my confidence, she did not like it. The last real conversation I had with her was the icing on the cake. She disliked my new stable, boring relationship because there was no drama. Halfway through telling her about an achievement at work I was proud of, she butted in to remind me of the time I was sexually and physically assaulted by my ex and warned me not to get ahead of myself because I have post-traumatic stress disorder and might go mental at any point. She also asked whether I had told my new partner about my mental health issues. I made an excuse, said I had to go, and I have not spoken to her since. Story 52. He and his wife withdrew into their extended family, including brothers, sisters, and in-laws. They now do everything together as a clan and have shut out all their outside friends. It is kind of weird. Story 53. We were inseparable from 1st through 12th grade. He ended the friendship and ghosted me when he left for college. This still hurts, and I am 33 now. Story 54. They had children, and I was not willing to prioritize or cater to those children the way their parents expected. If you want to share food with your child, go ahead, but this is my food. If you want to spend money to see a concert but leave early because the child is tired and cranky, I brought my own car. See you later. You expect to split the bill for this Airbnb evenly, even though you and the children have both bedrooms and I have the pull-out couch in the living room, which will also double as the rumpus room when the children wake up at 5 a.m. I do not think so. Story 55. I let my best friend down by calling him a week before his wedding and telling him I was not going to be his best man. It clashed with a father-son holiday in Europe and meant that I would have to take another ferry to the Isle of Wight first. I could not get in touch with him or find him for 18 years after that. I found him in July. We hugged, cried, and talked for hours. I apologized for the way I treated him. He was fine about it and said he had married a twat. They were divorced within 2 years, leaving him destitute. We are friends again. Story 56. Growing apart, mostly. Friend number 1 could not handle me having a baby because she hates children and dislikes hearing about them. It was not her fault, but we could not make it work. Friend number 2 cheated on her boyfriend, then married someone else, not the person she cheated with. I felt guilty, so I told the boyfriend eventually. He thanked me. Then somehow they got back together. He unfriended me on Facebook, and she never spoke to me again. Other friends just drifted away without any particular reason. Story 57. I got sober, started therapy, and landed a really good job. Then I was ghosted. It turns out that when you start getting your life together, you discover how long the people around you were preying on your downfall. Story 58. In middle school, we were kind of thrust together because our parents were all friends. Over time, I realized he was just a mean, snide little motherfucker. He took after his mother, who liked to take swipes at other people. When I started dating a girl my junior year in high school, he went ballistic. He told me he wanted to date her. Well, dude, you should have asked her then. He then started talking crap about me, and that was that. Good decision. I am in my 60s now. The guy dropped out of college after a semester and worked a lot of jobs selling shoes and similar work, but he never could keep a job because he was a raging asshole. Eventually, he moved back in with his parents and watched television all day. His dad was a successful dentist, so his parents subsidized his indolent lifestyle. His parents died, and when it came time to divide the estate with his sister and brother, he threatened them if they tried to sell the house. Eventually, he somehow managed to buy the house from them. I have no idea how. Now he is moving into assisted living at the age of 63 with health issues. Presumably because he sat around the house all day and did nothing while his parents waited on him hand and foot. Lessons. 1. If someone does not consistently make you feel good about yourself, that is not your friend. There are times when a good friend will call you out on your mistakes, but someone who cuts down other people and is constantly negative is toxic. Remove that person from your life. 2. Before entering any relationship that entails trust, watch how someone treats other people, such as cashiers or service workers. That is how they will treat you in 6 months. 3. Do not cripple your children by making their lives easy. Story 59. My friend of 40 years became a religious zealot and decided I was too secular for her. I grieved the end of our friendship, and I am okay now. Story 60. He and his wife, who are now divorced, became deeply involved in their religion, and I was deemed a bad influence on my nieces and nephews. He cut me off, and I have not spoken to him in 5 years. I still speak with my nieces and nephews. They realize how extreme their parents became. Story 61. I realized I hated being around her after she visited for a long weekend a few years ago. I stopped answering her calls but kept her on social media because I still loved and cared for her, even though she was the most toxic person I had ever met. She died of cancer earlier this year, and I never got to resolve things with her. I have many regrets. Story 62. She went to my rapist for a tattoo, and her reasoning was that he had never done anything to her. A decade-old childhood friendship went down the drain. That was the last straw for me. Story 63. Did you know adults lose 50% of their friends every 7 years? If you do not continually make new friends, you could have no friends when you are older. Story 64. I fell in love with her. She did not love me back in that way. We tried to make the friendship work, but it was not possible, and we went our separate ways. It is a shame. We had been friends since freshman year of high school and were really close before my confession ruined everything. At the same time, I am glad I spoke up and said something. Story 65. She got married and had a baby. We are still in touch, but not really best friends anymore. Story 66. They found more popular friends and cut me off. Elementary school can be pretty harsh sometimes. Story 67. She was involved in multi-level marketing schemes for years, and I supported her by buying Lia Sophia trinkets, protein shake mixes, and similar products until I finally grew tired of paying good money for overpriced junk. I told her I was done, and it did not go well between us. We did not speak for about a year. She was then diagnosed with advanced cancer and died. I wish I had a do-over. The whole experience haunts me, and it has been 9 years since she died. Story 68. He overdosed at age 38. I remember the day he called me to say he had been in an accident at work, so they were giving him oxycodone to manage the pain for a few weeks. 2 years later, he was dead. Story 69. He got a girlfriend. I laughed. We had been friends since we were about 5. We referred to each other as siblings and were close our whole lives. He was one of the groomsmen at my wedding. He struggled to keep romantic relationships, And when we were 28, he met a woman who did not like that he had female friends. I kept trying to make plans to hang out, but he was inconsistent about committing to plans or even agreeing, so I stopped reaching out. He never reached out to me and we completely stopped talking. He married her last year and has still never made any attempt to reconnect. We have not seen or spoken to each other since 2021. A childhood friendship that was as close as siblings ended in complete silence. No big fight, no drama, not even a goodbye. Story 70. She turned out not to be a real friend. I was always there when she needed me, but she was not there when I needed someone. Others were, so that's all right. Story 71. She was an extremely close friend for 3 years. We talked on the phone daily, went grocery shopping together every week, and our daughters traded sleepovers. When her daughter went to her father's, my husband would stay at his sister's so we could have a fully engaged girls' night. Then she got a serious boyfriend. She did not even take 2 weeks before everything stopped, and I was ghosted. I have never been treated so poorly or hurt so much in my life. Story 72. All of my ex-best friends left because of situational distance. In elementary school, I had a couple of friends. My best friend and I attended the same middle school for 6th grade, but were in different sections, so we only hung out during the few minutes between classes and the moments before and after school when we were dropped off or picked up. My parents enrolled me in a newly opened charter school for 7th grade. This was before social networks like MySpace and Facebook, so my elementary and 6th grade friends fell completely out of my life. Because I was smart and overweight, I was constantly bullied from 7th through 10th grade. I made a best friend in 10th grade, but we lost touch after graduation. By the time one of us unfriended the other over politics, we were barely acquaintances. My best friend in college moved away after graduating. All my best friends since I graduated college are still my friends. Some of those friendships have lasted about 8 or 9 years with regular time spent together. Story 73. Our friendship ended because when she got a boyfriend, she acted like I did not exist. She lied to me on my birthday to avoid hanging out with me, laughed in my face when I lost someone close to me, and was only there for me when it benefited her. Story 74. She started dating a man and cut off everyone. She would have cut off her children if they had not lived with her. Story 75. She bailed her husband out of jail after he was caught red-handed in a sting operation trying to meet a 13-year-old girl with special needs with whom he had been communicating. He was the girl's special education teacher. He was charged with online solicitation of a child and 5 counts of child pornography. There is no doubt about his guilt. He was caught attempting to meet the child. I cut off contact with her immediately after she told me she had bailed him out. Story 76. He hung himself last Christmas. He was 27. I miss you, mate. I'm sorry I was not there. He was the only friend who reached out, made plans, and asked how I was. After that, I stopped making plans and messaging first. It has been almost 8 months, and I have yet to hear from my other friends. Story 77. I still do not know. We had a great final night out before graduating from college. I moved home the next day, and then he removed me from his Xbox friends list. We were big fans of Halo, and he never spoke to me again. Years later, I ran into his wife, who had actually introduced us, and she did not know either. Story 78. We were friends throughout junior high and hung out together all the time. When we started high school, my entire friend group began to avoid and ostracize me. When I asked why, they just laughed. I am now in my 30s, and they still have not given a reason for suddenly othering and abandoning me. Story 79. I had 2 friends. First, a high school friend told me that the mother of his child left him. He deliberately quit his high-paying job, moved back in with his mother, and reduced his income to almost nothing so he would not have to pay child support. I could not believe he cared so little for his child that he would sabotage his own life to hurt his ex and their child. I stopped reaching out and we eventually lost touch. We have not spoken in about 20 years. Second, a close friend was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer just before the coronavirus disease 2019 pandemic began. Despite chemotherapy and experimental treatments, the cancer spread. He died a few months before Christmas in 2020. I still miss him. Story 80. About 15 years ago, she stole my money for the electric bill. Our power was cut off and we were unbearably hot. Our fluffy cat suffered as well. We had the electricity restored by September, but stealing from me was a deal breaker. Story 81. She kept pressuring me to have sex with her even though she had a long-term boyfriend who was also my friend. After I repeatedly said no, she said she felt like I owed her because of all the money she spent on me. Looking back, she owed me a lot of money, which is another story, and she mostly bought me things when I was upset with her. I stopped being friends with her after that. Story 82. She never grew up. She remained the lazy, manipulative main character I met at 14. Took me way too long to realize I had no use for her in my life. More importantly, I realized she made my life far more difficult than it needed to be and held me back. Fuck her. Story 83. He is addicted to painkillers for back pain and his whole personality has changed. We were friends for 50 years. Story 84. We met when we were 21. We are now 40. A couple of years ago she called me, high on cocaine, and rambled about a job opportunity from a man she met at a bar, someone she had gone home with and used cocaine with. I told her I was busy making dinner for my family and asked if I could call her back. She texted a long message accusing me of thinking I was better than her, not supporting her dreams, and refusing to take 10 minutes to hear about a life-changing opportunity. I felt bad and called her back. In the next 3 conversations she tore me down, called me a bad mother, told me my family was not proud of me, and claimed she knew I was self-conscious about my weight, which was why I could not find a partner. None of those things were true. I realized we had run our course. She had lost custody of her children, was unemployed, and at 37 was using cocaine on a weeknight with a stranger from a bar. She was projecting her problems onto me. We had a lot of fun once, but I had outgrown her years earlier. She seemed bitter and jealous and had not taken steps to improve her situation. Instead, she took it out on me. I have not spoken to her since. I did not plan to ghost her. I intended to end the friendship properly, but it never happened. Now, years later, I have no desire to reconnect. Story 85. I had no contact with my mother, who had borderline personality disorder, for a few years. She reached out to my best friend, who was essentially like a sister because she lived with us when we were young, and blamed her for ruining our relationship. My best friend felt guilty and tried to push me to break contact with my mother. I was angry at her insistence and blocked her. A few months later, she was murdered. Story 86. He became too engrossed in United States politics while living in the European Union, which led him to embrace all sorts of conspiracy theories. He actually believed that Joe Biden was a lizard man and that Donald Trump was an angel sent to save us. He also became a big supporter of QAnon, claiming it was a quantum supercomputer from another reality. We eventually stopped talking because I could not listen to those claims constantly anymore. Story 87. We were friends for 50 of my 55 years. She voted for Donald Trump and, while intoxicated, announced it at her transgender child's graduation in May. She then told her other child, who is gay, that she did it so he could not marry a man because she wanted biological grandchildren. I tried to remove her from the party to sober her up and kept telling everyone that I had no idea where that came from and that she must have been intoxicated. She refused to leave the party, so we decided to end it for everyone's sake. The next day, I showed up at her house with coffee and a late breakfast so we could laugh about how dumb she had been the night before. Her husband and 2 children were in the driveway loading things into their truck, and I immediately knew it was all real. Apparently, she spent the rest of the night telling her husband and children she hoped Donald Trump would come for them and explaining all the reasons why. The last straw was her emailing the United States Customs and Border Protection to ask if they would be deporting lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and queer people because she had 2 in her house. I went inside to prove them wrong and she was stone sober and said she had no regrets. I have not spoken to her since, but her husband and children stayed with us for a couple of weeks until he could find somewhere to live. One of their children is still with us because he is a senior in high school and wanted to finish with his class and not move to the neighboring county. I will never forgive her for the hurt and betrayal she caused. It is not even about voting for Donald Trump. It is about saying and doing those things to her own children. Story 88. Over time, she felt free to hold opinions and beliefs very different from mine, and I could no longer maintain the same emotional connection because her views often differed from what I considered acceptable. I still miss her sometimes. We both moved to different countries, and we were a great support to each other while navigating a new life and a new place. I remain grateful for that. Story 89. Her boyfriend cheated on her, so they broke up. A non-refundable trip to Mexico was coming up, so I suggested she at least get her own room. She chewed me out and asked for support, so I said have fun. On the trip he proposed and she forgave him. During wedding planning she found text messages from another woman, so I comforted her. After the wedding she asked me what I thought about a promotion. I said take the money. She turned it down because her husband did not want her traveling so much. She called me in the middle of the night to ask me to watch her kids. I said no, let the man cheat in peace. That was the last I ever heard from her. Story 90. We stopped being honest with each other. Little white lies to avoid awkward conversations turned into bigger things, and by the time something serious happened, there was no trust or communication left to save it. Story 91. She ran into a rough patch. After living with her sister and hating it, I had her come live with us. My husband was mostly against it, but she needed help and she and I had been friends for well over 30 years, so he agreed for my sake. Soon I learned she had gone to him and claimed I was making all the wrong decisions for our children and that she could do better, even though she had no children of her own except one she had given up for adoption at 16. She suggested he should kick me out and take on the roles of mother and wife. I also learned she had been coming into our master bathroom while my husband was in the shower to use the toilet. All this time she had been telling me what a great job I was doing as a mother. She did not realize how much responsibility it was, and that it was tripled because I had 3 school-age children. My husband turned her down flat. He loved me, we had been together for 30 years at that point, and we had just built a house. Shortly after, the state police showed up. She accused my husband of rape. We kicked her out and have not spoken to her since. A few years ago she came around to ask for forgiveness. My husband handled turning her away again. I never called her. She sat in front of my house for days, crying in her car. Play stupid games, win stupid prizes. Story 92. I went to Paris when we were 20. Her mother had a house there with her stepfather, so she was a frequent visitor. It was my first time in Europe and probably my 3rd time on a plane. She refused to take pictures with me the whole trip. We had been best friends since we were 7, but for some reason I think she either did not think I was cool enough to be seen with on social media or something else, and I really did not know. It was weird and hurtful. We went to Cannes one day. She wanted to nap instead of going out around town. I called her on it and she said it was her vacation too. When we finally arrived in Paris, she acted like a brat the whole time. She complained about being too tired to see the Eiffel Tower lit up at night. At the Louvre, halfway through our tour she doubled over dramatically, saying she could not walk anymore until she got some breakfast. We had literally been there an hour. She basically acted like I was a huge pain in the ass and a bother the whole time. It was not a good trip, and I stopped talking to her when we got back home. She tried to ask my boyfriend at the time if everything was okay and what had happened. I just kind of kept ignoring her. The day after we got back she went to a party with the high school cool crowd, took tons of pictures, posted them all over Facebook and stayed out late. It took me years to get over it. Honestly, it felt like a divorce or a death. Even as recently as 7 or 8 years ago she was living in New York City and we tried to reconnect, but she blew me off. Sometimes I still think about the good times, but overall I know it was for the best. Story 93. He joined the army and became a different person, off the rails. He moved away for a long time, as you would expect, but we still kept in sporadic touch. We arranged to meet for a drink with our respective girlfriends one day. It went well. The next day he proposed to her. He did not say a thing to me about being his best man or that he was even going to do it. We never spoke again. Not because of that. I think we simply went in different directions. The next time I saw anything about him was when he posted his wedding pictures. I was not the best man. I was not even invited. We had been inseparable, best friends from about age 6 or 7 until about 20. We never fell out. I just do not know what happened. I know he joined the army and moved away, but I also signed up and was still able to maintain my old friendships despite moving away. I have moved on from it all, but it used to bother me a lot. Story 94. I have had the same best friend for 55 years. Sometimes we talk every day, sometimes once a week or so. He has been with me through 3 marriages, addiction, grief, wealth, poverty, and every point in between. Story 95. She kicked me out of the car and told me to find my own way home over a relatively small argument. We should have been able to talk it out and both apologize after cooling down. We were on a road trip 12 hours from home. She still has not apologized and maintains she was 100% in the right and that I overreacted by no longer wanting to be her friend. Story 96. She had an emotional affair and lied so much that reconciliation was impossible. Story 97. After 20 years of being used, I got bored and stopped interacting. Story 98. I had surgery to remove a possibly cancerous bone tumor. I had had it since I was 6. It showed no signs of cancer until I was 19, so the operation required removing a chunk of bone and replacing it, and cutting through my rotator cuff to put in a rod to hold my arm together. I was in the hospital for 3 days. His mother worked there as a nurse, and he lived less than 2 minutes away. He never visited. I was on bed rest for almost 2 months after that. The pain medication kept me awake at the strangest hours, and most of the time I was alone. It was the loneliest, most painful time of my life. I begged him to visit, and after a month he came by for an hour. I could not even get him to join me playing on the Xbox while I struggled to play with one hand. He had always been a kind of lousy friend, but that was the moment I realized how bad a friend he was. I was in physical therapy for 2 years to recover. He never even asked how it was going. We stayed loose, almost friends, for a while after that. The fact that he switched schools to 1-2 hours away helped keep our relationship shambling along. When I found out he had picked up smoking after watching his mother go through breast cancer, not to mention my own cancer experience, I was completely done with him. I called him, told him what a piece of shit he was, and that was that. He has tried to mend fences with me since then, and I am open to the idea. He has turned a new page in some regards, but he is still a pretty lousy friend, so I am not exactly waiting up for him. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.